All right, now we're moving on to bead set rings. And the reason I'm doing them in this order is a bead set ring, you're going to do all the same things for a common prong ring, except we're going to have a little bit of a wall and maybe some millgrain, and I'll go over what both of those mean. So, okay, so this is common prong, this is bead set. Now this has millgrain, that's that little beading on the edge. But let's look at a couple pictures, you can kind of get an idea of what that is. So this is a bead set ring. So you can see it's basically common prong, and they sit in this little like grooved section with this raised wall. So this wall is plain, but sometimes that wall has a beaded edge, like what's shown here. Very simple. The reason I think it's one of the first ones on that CAD/CAM manual is because at the time it was the most popular that we're doing. We still do a lot of bead set rings, and they normally have this millgrain, so I'm going to show you how to do that at the same time, because of course if you got a ring that didn't have it, you would just skip that step. So you can see same thing, it's common prong but this little metal wall. All right, so again, I have all your little rules already typed out to try to make it as easy as possible, but everything else is going to start the same way. So we're going to need a ring rail, whatever size you want. We'll do an outside ring rail for argument's sake. We'll do it the same we always do. Let's see if this will go back to the, of course not, the right size. Okay, that's pretty good. So we can see both. All right, we're gonna add some gems. So they're still going to be at the top of your outside ring rail. Let's make them 1/3s or 1/5s. Again, those are going to be by far the most popular sizes. Let's bring them up to, even just like there-ish, just like the top third, because that'll allow us to see more of it as possible. Okay, so same rule as always. The table of the gems should sit flush with the top of the metal. So similar to how we started this one, except we cut the metal away. We're gonna cut the metal away later, just not all of it, because we're gonna leave that outside edge. All gems should be at least 0.5 millimeters above the ring rail. Same thing as before. We just don't want the culet, the bottom of the diamond, to stick through the ring. Round should sit 0.15 to 0.2 millimeters apart. Again, remember the default here is 0.2, so that's kind of going to be a given. All right, same thing for the prongs. The prongs should be about the same thickness, about the same height, and the same nudge as before. This says don't taper the prongs. We can update that. So I'm going to do our prongs the way we did before, about the same sizes. So let's make them, ooh, those are huge. So that was for when we were doing 2 millimeters. So let's make them like 0.55. That looks a little small. Let's do 0.6. And again, it's always good to have the height match the width, the diameter. Now you will see they drop really far because we had done, we'd extended the drop in the last video. Really, like 0.2 is sufficient. It means it goes just below the surface of the metal, so you don't have a weird gap. It wouldn't be a problem for it to go down that low as long as you cut it by the ring rail. You just don't need it that tall. All right, so we have our prongs the way we always do. This is where things start to get a little different. So the channel should sit at least 0.15 millimeters outside the gem, or the prongs, whichever is wider. So here's what we don't want. We don't want the wall to sit so close that there's no gap between the prong and the wall, and Gabber can't fold the prong over. So I'm pretty sure there was an example of that when we were looking. One of the bead set rings looked a little jank. This one. Okay, do you see how basically the prong is like in the wall and it looks kind of busted compared to how like beautiful and crisp that looks? Look at that. See how it kind of bled into it, and it looks jank. It is jank. We don't want to be jank. But look how beautiful. Well, even that's got it a little bit, but like definitely having a separation looks good. And in order to have a separation, Gabber needs to be able to run a saw blade between the channel wall and the prong. And 0.15 millimeters is the thickness of a saw blade. So here's where you can either do math or draw, whatever you'd prefer. So sometimes I like to, well, I mean, I can do the math, but sometimes if I'm like really tired, I'll start doing, oh, sorry, like jacking up my thing. Sometimes I'll literally come up here and like start drawing like a line, like 0.15. And really that's like the minimum. So I know that my channel has to go to here. And then I'll draw basically how thick I need my wall to be, which surely I've written that there. I've not. Oh wait, no, I do have it here. The outer metal wall should be at least 0.3 wide if you just want a plain wall, or 0.4 wide for mill grain. I mean, you could probably get away with 0.35 with mill grain. But, you know, for argument's sake, basically the heavier the mill grain, the wider the wall. So I know the ring needs to be about this wide, and then like I'll bring down the line like here when I'm making my profile. I know that's super jank, but like at the end of the day, when I've done a lot of math, sometimes that's what it takes. So we're gonna put in a profile. I can draw it. I've been using this profile placer here for a lot of these just because it's been convenient. So let's pick something pretty square. The beadset rings by nature just tend to be pretty square. So I know that the width needs to come to my green line. Roundabout-ish, that's close enough. And because it's at the bottom of my ring and I use the same heights all the time, it needs to be 1.5 millimeters tall. And honestly, that's close enough. Okay, so I can get rid of this line. I can even get rid of that line, that green line. And I'm just gonna sweep to this profile. As always, it's gonna assume I want it to get wider at the top. We don't, so we're gonna maintain the height. And now we have this beautiful, I mean, you can kind of see how this is turning into this. So what do we have left? Our cutters. So remember how we did a channel cutter for the common prong ring? We're gonna do the exact same thing, but we're gonna make sure it only comes out to this little guideline that we've made for ourselves. So let's go to channel builder. And you can see it's wider than that. And the only reason I can tell is because we can't see it. So I can use this little guy as a gauge. Oh, look there, my little line appeared. So here I can zoom in. And I can just kind of click wider, wider, wider till I get there. So again, that's like a little cheat. I want to make sure that the channel's at the height of the gem girdle. So let's, oh, well, it was probably right about there. And same thing applies for this portion of the wall as this portion of the wall. So if I don't want a prong to touch this wall, obviously you don't want a prong to touch this wall. So you want to make sure you have that little bit of a gap again, that like 0.15 to 0.2. So let's have it go to there. Everything is the same color, and that's like super distracting. So let's make that something else. Okay, and then we still need our gem cutters. Let's see, does gem cutter take me to the right thing? It does, so that's convenient. Let's not worry about this for now. Just X out of that every time that comes up. So we basically want to make sure that it extends past the ring rail. The base is 50 to 70% of the bottom, increasing with size. So these are small. So this 50% lower seat size is perfect. And what we're going to do, we're going to Boolean difference. So you can see it's here under tools, here with cutters. We're going to cut, in this case, lime green by orange. Because this isn't like a customer's file, I'm just going to delete the cutters. I would normally save them somewhere down here just so I'd have access to them later if I needed them. All right, so you can see what we have. Basically looks like this, right? The only difference is this has little beads. So I'm going to show you probably three or four new commands to show you how to get to that point. So what we want is a curve to tell those beads to sit on. And I'm going to take it right off the ring. I'm going to choose a different color just so it's like really easy to see. Actually, here's what I'll do. I'm going to put that on dark green and put this on lime because it'll be really easy to see lime against dark green. So I'm going to tell it to extract an isocurve, which basically means show me a curve on this line, on this surface. Extract an ISO curve. Select my surface. So I'm going to kind of like come up, and I basically want it to sit in the center of that dark green. Okay? You can see how it lets me kind of move around. Toggle means I'm going to change direction. So what I want to do here is basically pick a line that's equal distant from this wall as this one is from this wall. That's about there. Okay? And I can get rid of that little line. We were using that earlier. So I'm going to mirror this. I just want it on the other side here, and this one over here. There's two ways I can do it. I could mirror or rotate. For argument's sake, I'm just going to mirror. Or mirror. What's our mirror? Basically, what is our hinge point? In this case, it's 0. It's going to be pretty much always 0. So I hit shift and clicked. So now I have one on the other side, and I need another one of these. So mirror, 0, and my shift straight up. So you can see how I have it kind of all 4 points. I could split each one of these lines by the other line, right? So I could tell it to cut this by this and this guy. You can see now I have 2 pieces. But there's an even easier command I'm going to show you. If you select all 4 lines, and that's an important detail, you have to select everything involved, there's a command called trim. And basically, if you, anywhere you click, it's going to cut it to an intersection point of what you've selected. That will make more sense when I start clicking. So I'm going to click outside. And you can see how it stops at an intersection point. I come to the other side, click and right click, and now it's done. I have this like perfect rectangle that sits just outside my channel. Okay, so then I'm going to select them all and hit join. I've got one curve there. So now I just need to put beads on that curve. So if you remember how to do gems on curve, we're doing the same thing but with a bead. So you can see it's even a choice. If I F6, I can put gems on the curve. Do I want to put mill grain? Let's go to mill grain. Remember that Matrix saves your defaults. So whatever you've done recently for gems, it thinks you want for mill grain. So it has, see, it even says, so actually this is what's interesting. See how it says object type sphere? Let's just, for argument's sake, hit gems on curve. If I came up here and hit object type, I can do sphere and also get to mill grain. See how I have 2 millimeter mill grain, like the Matrix default? In this case, we don't want the tops on the curves. We want like half of the bead to sit above, and we want much smaller size. A pretty good rule of thumb is about 0.5 or 0.05 millimeters wider than your wall. So if you have a 0.4 millimeter wall, you would want 0.45 mil grain. And again, you'll be able to see visually what looks good. So we're going to do, in this case, 0.5 and a much smaller spacing, 0% spacing. One thing that we normally shut off that we're not going to today is the snaps to the corners, because if the beads aren't at the point, it looks jank. Like you can't have, no. So we're going to snap to the corners. We're going to make it go mirror all the way around. Okay, and then I just like to make sure basically everything looks good. Yeah, looks beautiful. So you can kind of see the mill grain is like the size of that wall. When it looks good, you right click. Interesting fact, only because if you didn't already know this, you would panic. It always sets mill grain in this dark green color. So let's say you were working, so you see how I was working in lime green, but it still made it dark green. Let's say you had dark green turned off for some reason, and when you right clicked, your mill grain would disappear, and you would be like, where is it? It's just on dark green, even if you had dark green turned off. That's just the default. I don't know why. Just like when you put gems down, they're always in this, was it gems 3 color? This, like, that's just the default for Matrix. I don't know why. But how fast was that? So again, small difference from the common prong. But now you have a bead set ring just like you have over here. And again, don't expect you to remember all those details. That's why it's typed here. But if you can do common prong, it's a small jump to bead setting.